Joining me right now is Kansas Senator Roger Marshall. He is a member of the Budget, Homeland Security, and Agricultural Committees. Senator, it's always a pleasure to see you. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, good morning, Maria. Great to be with you. And just about your subject here, look, the ball's in Joe Biden's court. It's up to him now. The pressure's on him. Speaker McCarthy has given him a budget that is much better for the American people. It has some work requirements. It's not perfect. It extends the debt limit for a year. So look, Joe Biden needs to come out of the basement and faithfully negotiate, but we also need a responsible budget. His policies have gotten us into this financial meltdown.
Well, I mean, at this point, we are talking about June 1st, which is just a few weeks away, that the U.S. runs out of money. Do you expect that you will be able to get the president to agree to some spending restraint now that we have this deadline so imminent?
You know, I do. Let's assume that the Secretary of Treasury is indeed right, that this comes due June the 1st. So sometimes Washington responds better to the pressure. And I, again, just want to give the Republican-controlled House credit. Quite often in my town halls, folks criticize us, why can't you Republicans stick together? Well, they stuck together. This is a much more responsible budget. Again, it's not perfect, but it does start reining in some of those wasted COVID dollars, work requirements. We don't touch Medicare. We don't touch Social Security. We don't touch veterans like we promised we wouldn't. So this is a good deal. If this would go on the Senate floor, I think it would pass.
You do?
I do. I do think that it would pass, not with 50 Democrats, but I think there'd be 30 or 40 Democrats that would pass it and 20 or 30 Republicans that would vote for it.
Wow. Let's talk about the administration's new mortgage rule. Senator, it has gone into effect this week, Monday. It penalizes home buyers with good credit. Buyers with lower credit scores can pay less, so it's on the better scores to actually make that happen. You're demanding answers from the administration about how this policy decision was made. Give us the background.
Right. Well, Maria, the reason we're even talking about this is Joe Biden-flation, that his economic policies have made housing unaffordable for hardworking Americans. Interest rates have become so high that no longer can hardworking families get into that first home or let alone go up. So now what the president wants to do is punish hardworking Americans and add an additional fee for those of us who have saved money, who have good credit scores, who pay off our credit cards, to subsidize subprime borrowers. Does this sound familiar? Are we going to repeat history again? So the White House is telling Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac they have to increase rates for those of us with good credit scores to subsidize those with low credit scores. And by the way, I said on a community bank board for some 15 years, that's what the Community Reinvestment Act was for. We don't need more subprime lending. We don't need another financial meltdown.
Yeah, I want to ask you about the banking sector. Given your experience on the Community Bank Board, the president addressed the First Republic bank sale yesterday. Watch this.
Let me be very clear. While depositors are being protected, shareholders are losing their investments. And critically, taxpayers are not the ones that are on the hook. I've called on Congress to give regulators the tools to hold bank executives accountable. And I've called on regulators to strengthen regulations and supervision of large and regional banks.
You know, it's interesting, Senator, it's as if it's all different groups. I mean, he's talking about taxpayers won't lose money, but shareholders will lose money, as if shareholders are like a bad group. They're supposed to lose money. I mean, shareholders are also taxpayers. What do you make of his answer there?
Well, it's very deceiving. First of all, community banks, every bank in America is going to be assessed a fee to make up for this loss of money. So a small community bank, let's say a billion-dollar community bank, I bet will have to pay in $100,000 or more in some type of a fee assessment to pay off these losses. Eventually, those fees trickle down to folks. You know, a couple thoughts about this. The last thing we need is more regulations. More regulations is not going to fix an incompetent management team or an irresponsible board, let alone federal regulators, which are woke, and that's their focus. So this bank made, like the other two banks, Silicon Valley and Signature, made some very big mistakes when it came to investing in long-term securities when the interest rates were low, and then they made long-term loans with low interest rates as well. They got upside down on their interest rate risk assessment. Management should have recognized that. Their board should have recognized that. More regulations is not going to fix incompetence. But again, to your point, the president is being very deceitful. Somebody has to pay for this, and it's going to be hardworking Americans.
Well, I mean, what are the rules going to look like at the end of this? Because the president has been clear about wanting more regulation for the banking sector. You know, Jamie Dimon and JP Morgan become a winner. They won the weekend auction at First Republic over the weekend. That makes JPM even bigger. Is that a negative, too big to fail? Or what about the rules for the smaller banks?
Right. So I think our biggest concern is this, as a small community banker myself involved with that industry, our fear is that people will take their deposits to the too big to fail banks, creating more concentration in the industry. Even just to back up, I was on the board when we went through the Dodd-Frank. We had to hire more and more people who just did inspected the regulations and were data entry people, but it didn't really bring any more success to our bank. So we don't need more regulations. Okay. Joe Biden's policies are are creating this. No one anticipated the acceleration of the interest rates. Again, this is on the back of Joe Biden eventually. The bank needs to take responsibility, but Joe Biden's inflation is what was the undermining factor in this bank not being able to keep up with those accelerated interest rate hikes.
Yeah, and the root cause of that 40-year high inflation was all of the reckless spending. I mean, you know, $5 trillion in borrowing just on Joe Biden's watch. Senator, we'll keep a spotlight on it. It's good to see you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Have a great day.